Welcome back, friends. This is Yvonne Davis, your traveling warrior astrologer, and I am bringing this to you from under the stars. Today I have a video for you about Neptune in Aries. So I'm titling this Neptune in Aries, Crisis and Opportunity. So Neptune will first step into Aries in 2025. Then it will go back into Pisces for a little while. Then it will return to Aries. And this is super interesting because of the fact that Neptune and Saturn will conjoin exactly at 0 degrees of Aries 46 minutes on February 20th, 2026. And this is so important for kicking off what I would call a new era. That's why the other video I called it the dawn of a new era. We are really, really moving into a new era. Now, Neptune will, like I said, it will conjoin Saturn exactly at 0 degrees of Aries on February 20th, 2026. So that's less than 3 years from right now when I'm making this video in May of 2023. Okay, so this is not far off. And again, Pluto will still be in Aquarius until June 11th. And I think whatever it's doing in Capricorn, it's not like it's going to go back to the past. It's like it's finishing the work that it was doing in Capricorn. Then it will go into Aquarius. And in Aquarius, it is definitely about issues around social justice. It relates to equality and democracy. So as I mentioned in one of the videos, in the past, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was when the Constitution of the United States was written and signed, and it was also when the French Revolution took place. So these were such significant historical moments that made a massive shift. Of course, the French Revolution took a long time to sort itself out. These are not easy times, but they do lead to something better because prior to the French Revolution, they were completely ruled by monarchy and they lived in poverty. You know, it was feudalism. They were serfs, which is basically another word for a slave. And there had been this like mini ice age, and they were suffering from starvation because they couldn't grow enough food because of the climate change. Notice there's something similar going on here. And in fact, it turns out that if you look back in history, you will find that there are trends, and you can see the connection between what's happening astrologically and what's happening on planet Earth. And you can see this repetition of a pattern where climate change leads to the breakdown of civilization, but then the rebuilding of civilization. And so that's what we are looking at over the next 20 years. And to me, it's shocking how fast this is going to happen. We're going to see massive disruption and change and transformation within 20 years. That is one generation. That is so unbelievably fast. It's just mind-boggling. And depending on how old you are, you will probably be around to see the whole thing, or at least part of it. So these are really exciting times, but also very challenging. That's why I'm calling it crisis and opportunity, because it's the crisis that will trigger the opportunities. So let me go back to talking about this Neptune Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries, 46 minutes. It's interesting that it came up exactly on the midheaven. You can see the midheaven here is at 0 degrees of Aries, 47 minutes. And the moon is also there, even though it's a wide conjunction, you know, a wide orb. I do think it's important that the moon is up there too, because the moon is the public, okay? And so the public is very much a part of what is happening. It's also interesting that Neptune and Saturn conjoining at 0 degrees of Aries, that mirrors the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And so that is really amazing. And, you know, they're, I don't know, 5 or 6 years apart. But what it's saying is that Saturn is coming through and it's resetting the clock. Okay. So the whole thing about human consciousness on planet Earth is that it's like a spiral. Consciousness evolution is like a spiral. If you think about the shape of a spiral, or like a funnel, like ironically like a tornado, it has that shape where it starts out low and small. The circle is like low and small and tight, and then it widens and widens and widens and widens, and it moves upward. That's the shape of the spiral. The spiral doesn't just stay at the same level, it moves outward and upward. Okay. And that is the shape of human consciousness evolution. We're always coming around to the same karmic issues over and over and over and over again. The human species has been through so many countless climate changes over, the entire scope of our species evolution. And climate change and climate disruption are the number one cause of civilization decline and collapse. But it's also, when a civilization declines and collapses, it's also an opportunity to rebuild. And that's what has to happen here, because the economic system that we live in right now is based on infinite growth, which is not possible. It's not even mathematically possible on a finite planet. So for some reason, we haven't faced that reality. And I think it's just because for a long time, we had a lot of space to spread out, but we've reached the boundaries. And nowadays, scientists and sociologists call those tipping points. The boundaries are the tipping points where we have overshot the carrying capacity of the earth, and therefore we are triggering this decline and collapse. But that doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing. And that's why I'm actually excited about the astrology and sharing that astrology with you, because I see tremendous hope in these alignments. So I want to share that with you. So the whole point is that if we can see that coming and we can begin to prepare for it, then we have a better chance of what's called managed descent, meaning, or managed transformation. Okay. Managed transition, so that it's not just hitting us upside the head, which for a lot of people it is, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, heat waves, earthquakes, all of those kinds of disruption, wildfires, food shortages, plagues. We just went through one, pandemics, that these things can hit us so hard that we're not ready for it. And that can be absolutely devastating. I'm just going to be devastating one way or another, but it's like, if you're looking into the future and you're seeing, oh, these things are going to be coming, we better start preparing for it. We better start managing our descent. Okay. Managing our transition, managing our transformation. I use the word descent because what I mean by that is that we will no longer live in the kind of growth economy that we have lived in before, because it's simply not possible. We have to live in a new kind of economy, and we all need to think about what that means. So, if you're on a fixed income, if you're already in retirement and you're older, then hopefully you can just ride it out. You may have to cut back a little bit to tighten the belts and all that. But for the most part, hopefully you can manage with that. I think it's going to be harder for people who are working and they're dependent on their paycheck, because especially with inflation these days, everything is so precarious that people are just one paycheck away from homelessness. And that's why we're seeing homelessness as the new epidemic in this country. So you can see the signs all around you, and I trust that people who have been coming to my channel for years, they are already in tune with this information. It's like, we tend to think a certain way, and that usually includes consideration for environmental issues, because we are aware that that we've put stress on the planet, and we need to address that. And we need to address it in a way that also takes into account social justice. So again, I'm really excited about these alignments because I see hope in them. So I want to explain why I find this so hopeful. So as I said, I love the fact that Saturn is resetting this this new era, with its conjunction to Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, which mirrors its conjunction to Jupiter at 0 degrees of Aquarius. It's setting up this whole new cycle of consciousness evolution, consciousness expansion for the human species. And we have to go through the crisis. That's just the way it works. It's has something to do with the whole Uranian idea of breakdown leads to breakthrough. Revolution leads to evolution. So there's something about the human consciousness that seems to need the breakdown before it can make the breakthrough. For some reason, doesn't happen until we reach that crisis point. And I wish it weren't that way, but unfortunately, it does appear to be that way. So therefore, we have to go through the pain and the trauma of the breakthrough, of the breakdown and of the crisis in order to get to the breakthrough. But I do think it helps if we're at least looking ahead and knowing that that's coming. And then we can begin to prepare as much as possible to try to make it more smooth and more managed. So again, I love that 0 degrees conjunction. It resets, it mirrors the one with Jupiter and Aquarius. And I also love the fact that it's exactly on the midheaven, and the moon is up there too, which is the public. And Aries is the warrior sign. So Aries is about saying we're fed up, we want to see change. And Saturn is very much about structure, and Neptune is about our ideals. So when you put Saturn and Neptune together, what you do is you take the ideals and you bring them down into concrete manifestation. So this is just absolutely wonderful. And we're willing to take the action. We're willing to fight for it because this is all happening at the top of the chart in Aries. The other thing I love about this is that at that very moment of that conjunction, we have the sun in Pisces, the North Node in Pisces. The North Node is a very similar energy to Jupiter. It's very forward thinking. It's the direction of our evolution. It wants to move forward and outward and expand, and it wants to step into the future of its evolution. And then we have Venus, of course, the great lover of the zodiac. Her whole thing is about what she loves, what she's passionate about. It's about relationships. It's about, and that doesn't just mean, like when I say love and passion, it can also be a very humanistic kind of social love, like agape, as an example, is just an open-heartedness and compassion. And then we have Mercury, which of course is the mind, the thoughts, the communicator, the information. It's also in Pisces. And so the wonderful thing about having all this energy in Pisces is that Pisces is the sign of in a sense, the commune, the collective, the commons, our idea of ourselves as a community on planet Earth. Okay. We're the human family. And so Pisces is very much about that collective, that idea of community and collective and commons, and all working together, understanding that we're all in this together. And so having all that energy there complements the Neptune, because Neptune rules Pisces. And so there it is, in its conjunction to Saturn, getting ready to start a whole new way of life. And at the same time, we get this really supportive sextile from Uranus in Taurus. Now, Uranus is starting to reach the latter degrees of Taurus, which means that it's finishing its transit of Taurus. And it may still cause some disruption. And, what Uranus does is it creates disruption, chaos, confusion, revolution, it can cause food shortages. It can cause earthquakes, all kinds of disruption, turning things upside down, breaking things down. It is the breakdown to lead to the breakthrough. So it's nice to have it in this sextile, because whatever it's bringing, it can be supportive and create windows of opportunity. And then we have Jupiter on the ascendant, which makes Jupiter even more powerful. And Jupiter is in Cancer, and it is making a very favorable trine to Venus in Pisces and all these other planets in Pisces. So it's in a water sign. So this is all about love, compassion, empathy, love of our fellow men. So it's wonderful to see the supportive energy at a time when we need to fight for what's right, and fight for the environment, and fight for social justice, and fight for the rights of the animals and other species who live on this planet. And the one last thing that I'll mention that I think is very relevant to this is the fact that Mars and Pluto are in Aquarius, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Aquarius is the sign of humanity and future and technology. So Mars is the ruler of Aries, and it's making a sextile to the planets in Aries, specifically to the moon, the people. And so there is a lot of energy there that is supportive for humanity as a collective, and working together, being willing to take action, being willing to use information like science and technology and data, and to be able to use all of that in a supportive way to solve the problems. Okay. And then Pluto, again, is all about bringing the power of Pluto, which is all about wealth and power, into Aquarius, which is the sign of humanity again. So that's why whenever you see Pluto in Aquarius, you see things like the French Revolution and the signing of the US Constitution, which were all about creating more equality and democracy. So this is just such a favorable chart. I love it. And by the way, while Pluto is in Aquarius for those 20 years, and Neptune will be in Aries until 2039, so that will be like 13 years. And so obviously not quite as long as Pluto, but pretty significant, more than half of the time that Pluto will be in Aquarius. And they will be sextiling each other, which means they're supporting each other. They're creating opportunities. I mean, this energy is just going to take us toward so many solutions. And I feel so hopeful when I see this. Okay, so that's pretty much my reading for this subject. And I'm going to keep coming back to this over and over again. Although I remember one other thing I wanted to say was that there is one downside with Neptune in Aries, which is that Neptune is a water sign. It rules all bodies of water and oceans and seas, and virtually all bodies of water on the planet. And it's in a fire sign. And, Aries is a fire sign. It's all about heat. So if you think about what we are dealing with here, we're dealing with the melting of the glaciers, the melting of the ice caps, the melting of, the Greenland ice sheet, and all of these things. And so, like I said, this is less than 3 years away, but it's going to be there for 13 years. And basically what we're going to see is we're going to see that melting. And that's the not so good news, but it's just a fact. I mean, there's no other way to read this. Neptune in Aries, when we're already on the verge of all the ice melting because of global climate change, there's just no other way to read this. And we just have to accept that that's the future that we are facing. And so we're going to have to look, we're going to have to accept that. That's going to be, like I said, 13 years. It'll finish up in 2039, so just before 2040. And then it will move into Taurus, which is the earth, and the water, then we'll really start to see the water coming onto the earth. So I'm not saying like it's not like turning a switch on or off, you know. I mean, sometimes astrology is that literal. Usually it's more like a wave, you know. It's like as soon as, well, we're already seeing it, but as soon as Neptune goes into Aries, we'll begin to see even more of that, even more of the melting, and all the things that will come with that. And it's just something that we're going to have to accept and adapt to, because it's reality. And that's why I say foreknowledge gives you forewarning, or something like that. So anyway, you know, I mean, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just reading the chart, and I don't see how anyone would be able to not see this anyway. And I'm not even if you're not looking at the astrology, I mean, it's just so obvious that this is the direction we're heading in. We haven't been able to stop it. We haven't been able to turn the ship around, and we're just going to have to face whatever's coming from it and find some way to adapt. So now you have that knowledge. Okay. Now you're forewarned. So now you can take that knowledge and do with it what you want, because it is going to happen and we have to get ready. But it's also that crisis that's going to lead to the breakthrough. Okay. So it's the crisis that's going to lead to the opportunities. It's going to push people to start making the changes that need to be made, because we've been waiting for decades. You know, any of you out there who are also environmentalists, you know, we have been waiting for decades for people to wake up and start doing things on the collective level. And, you know, it's just, we've just waited too long. We can't wait any longer. And Neptune in Aries is going to make that very obvious. So that's the reality. And then again, so that lasts for 13 years. And then when it goes into Taurus, then the water goes onto the land. And again, it's not black and white. It's not like flipping a switch. It's a wave. So I'm just saying that it's like it intensifies. We're seeing it now, but it will intensify with Neptune and Aries for those 13 years. And then the water onto the land will intensify when Neptune goes into Taurus, because the thing about it is it doesn't happen overnight. You know, there is some kind of like 30-year, it's like a lag. There's like a 30-year lag or something like that between the events that impact climate change and the environment and everything that ripples out from that. There's a lag. So whatever we're doing today, right now, won't really fully show up for 30 years. So like 2053, you know. And so it's the same with the glaciers melting. It's not like they melt one day and then the next day Miami is flooded. You know, it doesn't work that way. So it will take time it's like throwing a pebble into a pond and then watching it ripple outward, you know. So the moment that pebble hits the pond is not the exact same moment that the outer ring goes as far out as it can. It takes time for it to ripple outward. And so it's the same way with the impact that I'm reading in the chart with Neptune in Aries for 13 years and then Neptune in Taurus for 13 years. So the melting of the ice, more greenhouse gases, more dealing with the impact of that, but also waking up. You know, people are going to wake up. We're not going to be having these totally idiotic, asinine conversations about global warming anymore. It's like, in my opinion, it would be like, you know, trying to have a conversation about someone who's trying to tell us that Santa Claus is real. You know, it's like, you're not going to waste your time having a serious conversation with someone about whether or not Santa Claus is real, you know. So we're just going to have to get on with the reality. And again, it's a crisis that leads to an opportunity. So that can ultimately be a good thing. And especially if we're prepared and we're willing to see what's coming and we're willing to do something about it.